Now, does it work? Be right back. Welcome to the channel, Scott's Garage HTX. Don't forget the HTX. Today I'm going to hook up this motorcycle light underneath my cabinet above my workbench in my garage. I'm going to do this with the help of a dimmable LED voltage driver, like so. It is going to change the 120 volt AC input to the 12 volt DC output. And it says so right here on the label. Let's get started. I want to add a disclaimer. I have hired an electrician to go over this with me and to make sure I haven't created any fire hazards or any unsafe conditions. Now to start, you need to make sure that the driver maximum wattage can handle what it's trying to output. In this case, the light is 35 watts and each of the blinkers are 23 watts. This driver is a maximum of 60 watts, so I cannot drive all three of these lights with this one driver. I need to split it up, which is actually cool for me. I actually want to run this separately. I want to run the light independently of the blinkers. Now, the blinkers won't flash. There's probably something I can do to make them flash, but I really don't want that, quite honestly. This is more of an Art Deco piece I'm going to hang above my workbench. So what I'm going to do is run two drivers, one to the light and one to the blinkers, and then have two toggle switch or a dual toggle switch that operates both of them separately. I'll show you. In consideration of time, most of this has already been hooked up. The toggle switch is already hooked up to the box and power is running to it. And one of the drivers has already been mounted. It's already been hooked up from the 120 volt AC and the 12 volt low voltage DC wire's already been hooked up. So that just leads us to hook up the second one. And it's the same as the first one, so that's why I started to go with this. Now hooking up the input or what's coming from the toggle switch is very self-explanatory. You have a hot wire or the black wire. You have a black wire running from the toggle switch. You have the same on the driver, and then you have a neutral wire that's white that's coming from the toggle switch, the same on the driver. And then you have a green wire coming from the driver, and that goes to the exposed wire from the toggle switch, which is of course the ground. From the output side of this, it really doesn't matter which wires you hook up to which wires, from the driver to the low voltage wires running to the unit you're trying to drive. It's low voltage, all you're doing is completing the circuit. But in my case, I've got 4 wires running to the device I want to drive. I've got 2 coming from this driver and I've got 2 coming from this driver. I want to make sure that I use the same 2 wires from this driver driving one half of that output unit or the unit I want to drive, and the same 2 wires from this side running the other part of the unit I want to drive, or the headlight. So this one might be the headlight and these 2 might be the blinkers. I'm going to hang this real quick. Shouldn't be very difficult. Just going to keep the wires out of the way. Now, sure these are off. Yeah. Probably not the safest way to check to make sure the electricity is off is to touch the wires. But I did run a test light on it before. The hardest part of any of this to me is getting all that into this little square space. Impossible. Well, not impossible, but really, really hard. Okay. Now I'm going to put the cap back on. Which is awfully fiddly. Okay, do you want to test it? Of course you do. Well, I can't remember which toggle goes to which, but well, that one right there, fine. Blue to green, let's see what happens. Hey, what do you know? It works. Now I've got to run this wire all the way around the garage and mount the piece, which is probably the most unfun part. But I'll cut through it and we'll show you the end result. Before I mount this, there's one other thing I wanted to do, and that was hook up this quick disconnects to the wires themselves. On the blinkers, that was not really a big deal. There's one wire from this blinker, one wire from this blinker, and a ground. I took the 2 wires from the blinkers, hooked it up to one disconnect, and then took a disconnect up to the ground itself. And I'll hook these up accordingly to the low voltage wires. On the headlight, it was a little bit more involved because the tabs on the headlight itself were wider than any of the connectors that I had. So I took some snips, some tin snips, and trimmed those down a little bit. You could have used anything, a file, even a Dremel tool or something like that. This was the quickest thing that I could use. And now it fits, and I'll run these wires accordingly to that circuit as well. Now I've got to figure out how I'm going to mount this thing. It's mounted. Check it out. And I did this as simply as I could, quite honestly. I just took some eye bolts from Home Depot. I got 4 of them. On the back ones, I had to cut them down a little bit because I threaded them through some holes that were already in the bracket of the motorcycle light. And then the motorcycle light already had these little rubber grommets over top of this little mount right here, and they fit perfectly right through the little eye bolts. And inside, to keep it from, excuse me, I'll disconnect you here real quick. To keep it from scratching up anything on the inside, I used, and you need light. There we go. I used some cap bolts on top of it right there to keep it from scratching any of my towels or anything I put up inside here. Works pretty good to me. I mean, I didn't have to weld anything. I didn't have to cut anything really. And now, does it work? Be right back. What do you think? And now I can work in my workspace down here on my workbench and have some light. Cool. You guys keep on keeping on, and I'll catch you next time. Thanks a lot.
The light switch will come with a black wire, hot, a white wire, neutral, and an exposed wire, the ground. These 3 wires will match up with corresponding wires from the input side of the driver device. From the output side of the driver, connect the red and blue wires to the light bulb terminals. It does not matter which wire you connect to which terminal. This is low voltage, and you are just completing the circuit.